We dismiss history at our peril.
Liberty Nation Radio with Mark Angelides.
And we're back here on Liberty Nation Radio with our special guest, Joe Schaefer. Now, we've been talking about illegal immigration, the exploitation that goes along with that. And now Joe and I were talking off camera about an old book, well, not that old, I guess, but that we both read. It's called Fast Food Nation. And I guess the part that we were discussing there, Joe, was about a company going into Nebraska and saying that it's ready to be part of the community. Could you just outline that for us?
Sure. I mean, the book's about 20 years old now, and to me, it's more relevant than ever. I actually haven't read it in several years, but it's really parts of it have really stuck with me. The guy just did a good job of muckraking, and it's hard to refute a lot of what he had to say. And he was talking about a town, I believe it was in Nebraska. I'm pretty sure that's right. A big poultry processing plant or whatever wanted to go into this town, and they had to sell it to the locals, the town council and the people. And they promised them the world. It's like, these are hardworking employees we're going to have here. They don't cause any trouble. They work hard during the day. They go to sleep. Everything's going to be fine, and the whole town's going to prosper. So they get their plant. It gets approved. The workforce is all foreigners, a lot of them illegal aliens. Crime skyrockets, drugs skyrocket, pollution skyrockets from the plant. This goes back to what we were talking about. Again, when you have a company that is only concerned with profits and has no interest in the local community whatsoever, you're going to have these things keep happening. And to me, the rise in an illegal alien workforce, the rise in child labor, which is just such a grotesque scandal, ultimately comes down to the frayed connection between employer and local community in the United States today. And you can call that a criticism of capitalism. You can call that a criticism of globalism. I'm not really interested in getting into an ideological fight on those grounds, but something is fundamentally wrong. And the answer, if you don't want to support this anymore, to me, is stop giving your money to these big corporations that obviously don't care about American communities anymore.
Yeah, it seems that as long as there's some support checks for donations for political campaigns and whatnot, or lobbying groups which have just unprecedented access to lawmakers, and they work for large corporations, mostly globalist corporations or corporations with a global outlook in terms of who they recruit, then things really are just going to continue. You've got this, I hate to call it a perfect storm, let's call it an imperfect storm, where you have paltry fines and slaps on the wrist for breaching what are already laws in this country, in the United States. You have borders wide open and a refusal to close them down, or to at least monitor the people who are coming in with some degree of both interest and respect for them as a person. You can say, well, it's no respect for their privacy to look into them, sure, but it's respect to stop the 16-year-old getting sucked into a deboning machine and killed. That's a certain amount of respect. And then you've got the third aspect of it, which is lobbyists have never been more prevalent, although obviously they're not all termed lobbyists nowadays. They're special interest groups. They're political action committees. They're NGOs helping the poor migrants across the country with envelopes of cash or debit cards, courtesy of the UN. Where does the UN get that money? US taxpayers. So it comes direct from authorized by Congress. And it's all this imperfect storm that guarantees one thing: the situation will continue. And we did mention this phrase before, Joe. We hear it a lot in political realms, and that is, if it saves one life. Now, we hear that most commonly about the gun control debate. And they say, well, we should do this because if it saves one life. Joe, rough estimate here, if I may. How many lives do you think would be saved in factories, fentanyl overdoses, crimes? We've heard about it in the hearings the other day, didn't we? A 17-year-old gang member who should have been flagged coming in because he was a known gang member, illegally getting into a car, killing a family. It's a disgrace. We heard about that in the hearings that took place the other week. How many lives would be saved then? Because I would bet that it's at least one. I would bet money that it's at least one life would be saved.
I'm so glad you brought this up because it opens up something that I really want to talk about. And I can tell you about one potential life that could have been saved. And I hope this doesn't sound callous in any way because it's not meant to be. But let's be honest here. The people pushing this nation-destroying wave that's going on in this country, they don't really care about average American lives. They didn't care about Kate Steinle when she was killed by an illegal alien in San Francisco, or Pierce Corcoran or Molly Tibbetts. I can go on to other names. They don't care about them. I think it's very important to point out that until it affects them personally, nothing is going to change. And I've written about this in the past. I remember Bob Simon, he was at 60 Minutes, CBS guy. He was killed because the limo driver of the company that CBS had out was an Afghan refugee with serious mental problems, had attempted suicide, I think, multiple times, should never have been driving a limousine. He was driving his limousine and he crashed head on into traffic. But these things need to affect the elites, because when they affect the average Americans, they don't care. They don't care that it's affecting us. But when you talk about body counts, you got to bring it all up. You talk about fentanyl, you talk about crime, you talk about the health problems that we were discussing that come from the factory food that is the reason they hire this illegal alien workforce. I really, truly believe you're talking about tens of millions of American lives that are affected by this construct that we have now that is feeding this illegal alien workforce that is now being specialized by child labor. So it's just going to it's a rolling ball. It's going to keep getting worse. And I do think it's important that, it is unfortunate, but it's important that they start to suffer like we have been suffering for decades now, and then things are going to really change.
You bring up a really important point, I think, regarding the impact on basically your average Americans, your average regular people, because obviously I'm from the United Kingdom, England, and I was very heavily involved in Brexit. It was my passion at the time was Brexit, and my reason behind it was sovereignty of the United Kingdom from the European Union. But one of the really big issues for many people was immigration, which, by the way, it was out of control and is still out of control, despite Brexit. But one of the big issues was that on one side, the Brexit side was arguing that mass immigration deflates wages. And the other side was saying, no. If you have a look at all the numbers, there's a net benefit from more immigration in terms of wage growth and productivity. And anyway, it turns out that both sides were right. But the caveat being that it only depresses wages for those who are on low wages anyway. So essentially it was making the poorer much poorer and the richer much richer, because when it all averages out, it doesn't make a difference, right? But it's the very real effect on the people who are already at the bottom of the ladder that are feeling the squeeze from mass illegal immigration. And we'll be talking about that after this short break. Don't go anywhere. We dismiss history at our peril.
Liberty Nation Radio with Mark Angelides.
Don't get caught up in the media madness. Join our movement for free thinking and free speech at libertynation.com. Publishing news and analysis 24/7 with original articles by our team of authors who tell it like it is. Join us each week for online TV shows, The Uprising Podcast, and Liberty Nation Radio. We believe in free thinking and free speech. We are libertynation.com.